She has walked down these steps before as a member of Japan's cabinet. This is the first time she's led. The first time a woman has ever led. After bowing to the emperor, Takaichi Sanae is now Japan's prime minister, the first woman to hold the post. She's promising to build a strong economy and protect the country with diplomacy and security. The student says Takaichi will be a breath of fresh air. This office worker says she just wants the right person for the job, whomever that is. Though Takaichi is the first woman to lead Japan's government, an expert says she's not likely to revolutionize Japan's male-dominated society.
She just represents conservative continuity more than feminist transformation.
Takaichi opposes same-sex marriage and married couples having different surnames.
You turn if you want to.
Right.
Her role model.
You could use a jump scare warning or like a trigger warning, bitch. Don't show me that fucking cow. Ugh.
Is former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, a conservative who crushed the power of unions.
And completely ruined the economy for the working class, ruined the housing market. She's viewed as one of the worst leaders in Britain's history. People literally went out on the streets and paraded singing "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead" when she died. She died and they were out parading because they were so happy she died because they hated her so much. Not to mention, she was in power for the Troubles. She's a fucking... Fuck her. Like, she's an evil cunt.
She's also a devotee of former Japanese leader Abe Shinzo and his policies. And while she says she wants to build a strong relationship with South Korea, she's often visited a controversial shrine to dead Japanese warriors, including some found guilty of war crimes during the Second World War and those who brutally colonized Japan's neighbors.
So she has regularly gone to a shrine for the equivalent, the white equivalent, it would be Nazis and Civil War veterans. That type of thing. She has regularly gone to visit their shrine.
Facing consecutive electoral setbacks, the party chose Takaichi's hardline credentials to prevent a defection among their supporters to the far right.
Japan is one of Canada's top trading partners, and Park says Takaichi is likely to keep or improve that relationship. She won the party leadership, not a general election, and only has a slim majority. Takaichi remaining prime minister, Park says, likely depends on whether she can help Japan's slowing economy. Nathaniel Dove, Global News.
Okay, so the way it worked there was what he said about she did not win the the election. She was made head of the party and then, or the head of the party stepped down and she was made head of the party. So as head of the party, she automatically became the new prime minister. So the people did not vote her in, but at the same time, she's from the same party and has all the same values as a lot of their former leaders. So it's, I doubt they're going to contest it that much unless she fucks things up crazily. All right, so today I wanted to talk about Sanae Takaichi, the new Prime Minister of Japan. She is the first female Prime Minister of Japan, which is, in terms of gender equality, you might think it's a win, it might seem like a win. I've seen people say and act like it is. It's not. It's like... I was gonna say it's like if Sarah Palin had won the presidency, but she's so stupid. I don't think I could insult this woman's intelligence like that. But like, just imagine ultra conservative female president of the United States. Like, it wouldn't be a win. Imagine if fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert or any of those freak of nature women get into power. Like, it wouldn't be good for women. Like, so let's look into Sanae Takaichi a little bit. I'll probably just be calling her Takaichi. Takaichi is a Japanese politician who became Prime Minister of Japan and President of the Liberal Democratic Party in October 2025. So here in Canada, our Liberal Party is a left-leaning centrist party. In America, they just dub liberal as like any left-leaning person. But around the world, there are variations, and in the Liberal Party, the Liberal Democratic Party is actually a combination of two parties, the Liberal Party and the Democratic Party, and it was the right wing and the far right wing. They combined just like they did here in Canada. The Liberal Democratic Party in Japan is the far right conservative party. She is the first woman to hold either of these positions, as well as the first from the Nara Prefecture, a member of the House of Representatives from 1993 to 2003, and since 2005. She also held several ministerial posts during the premierships of Shinzo Abe and Fumio Kishida. So, she was a protege of Minister Abe. She held various positions during Abe's premiership. If you're unaware, Shinzo Abe was the former Prime Minister of Japan. He is ultra-conservative. He was one of the longest serving prime ministers of Japan, like, ever, I believe. And he did a lot of things. The economic policy that they use in Japan is his. I still believe they still use it. In 2022, I think it was, he had already resigned from the prime minister post, and he was assassinated by a young man in 2022. This talks about it a little bit.
Another key moment was the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in 2022. Abe had been Japan's most influential nationalist leader. His policies strengthened national security, promoted conservative social values, and built a close alliance with the United States. His death shocked the nation and exposed the LDP's links to controversial organizations, including the Unification Church. This scandal and the loss of Abe left a vacuum in the conservative right. Sanae Takaichi stepped right into that gap. First elected to parliament in 1993, she has held senior government posts, including Minister of Economic Security and Internal Affairs. She is known for her conservative approach, strong national security, traditional social values, and aggressive state-led investment in technology and infrastructure. Her rise to party leadership was competitive. Candidates needed at least 20 nominations from party lawmakers. Lawmakers and party members voted. A runoff was held. Takaichi defeated Shinjiro Koizumi, son of former Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi, in the runoff. She became the first woman to ever lead Japan's dominant party. Her leadership style is rigorous. She famously told party members to quote-unquote work like a horse, emphasizing dedication and rebuilding credibility. Takaichi has also been controversial. She has regularly visited the Yasukuni Shrine, which honors Japan's war dead but is seen by neighbors as a symbol of Japan's lack of remorse for wartime aggression, especially during the Second World War. She has previously made xenophobic remarks and expressed revisionist views on Japan's wartime past.
if you're unfamiliar with that flag that you just saw, it's called the Rising Sun flag. A lot of people would compare it to the Nazi flag. I say, yeah, it is akin to that. A lot of people have arguments against that, and I say it's probably more akin to that of the Confederate flag. Either way, it's extremely fucking xenophobic, racist. It represents so much pain and hurt, and it is not even your real flag. It's the military flag. So give it up. Like, just stop. Like, I hate that flag. Go look into the history of the Rising Sun flag. Go and look into the history of Japan. I considered biting my tongue a few before this video, and I realized that, like, I wouldn't bite my tongue about England, America, Israel, any of these white powers that are colonial imperial forces that have committed mass atrocities and war crimes. I would never bite my tongue about them. So I'm not biting my tongue about Japan. And I won't. I don't have anything against Japanese people, but I don't agree with the government most of the time. I don't like the government. I find them to be a very sinister force. I don't agree with military actions in the past. I don't agree with most of the leaders on most viewpoints. But I have a good appreciation for the people and the culture, and that is, well, culture is by design. The places like Germany have had to atone for their past and have had to acknowledge it and apologize and have done everything in their power in order to atone for it and acknowledge the past and educate the youth on how these things began and how they start and how bad it is, and etc., etc. Japan has never really fully. There have been times. There have been a few times where some things have been acknowledged, but not really on a grand scale, and a lot of the leadership will have some very revisionist history outlooks on the past, and instead of apologizing and acknowledging and atoning and trying to make things better, they just export culture to the nth degree. And you see that through how much, like, media. I mean, anime, J-horror was huge. Like, how many times do you go every time you go to a store, you basically see something that with Hello Kitty on it? That's part of the PR marketing that Japan has done to make us forget about the past and see them as this pacifist nation, which they're not.
In recent months, however, she has moderated her rhetoric, sending a religious ornament instead of visiting the shrine directly.
So this is one thing that they'll do. They will, when they first get elected or when they're first in power, when they're in the campaign stage, they won't go to the shrine. But once after it's like a couple months in, maybe a year in, then they'll go to the shrine because they don't want to make people mad at first when they first get in power, because they don't want to lose it.
This shows a cautious approach to diplomacy while keeping her conservative base. Japan's challenges go beyond politics. The economy is stagnant. Prices are rising, especially for staples like rice. Wages are low, the population is shrinking, social security costs are increasing, one-off government cash handouts have not restored public trust. Takaichi's rise is therefore very significant. She represents both continuity and change. She carries forward Abe-era conservatism while navigating a fractured parliament, a divided party, and a country under economic and social pressure. The rise of Sanseito shows that voters are open to new voices, breaking the predictability of Japanese politics. Japan is at a crossroads. It has just got its first female prime minister. It has a divided parliament, rising populism, economic and social pressures, and most importantly, an aggressive China just in the neighborhood. The decisions Takaichi makes now could stabilize Japan or signal the start of a very different political era. That's all for now. For more such.
So he just talked about multiple things about the economy. The economy in Japan is running on a model that was put forth by Shinzo Abe. It's called Abenomics. I am far from like an economics person, but from what I've read, it seems as though it benefited the rich, but the working class didn't really benefit, and it led to a lot of inflation and a stagnant economy, which is stagflation. It's not good. I'm pretty sure like investments and things like that were better, and the national economy and like the stock market of Japan got a lot better, but the working class person's life did not. And I think it also kind of attributed to that trickle down effect that has never worked ever. The only thing that trickles down is greed and incompetence. That's it. Okay, so Takaichi's views have been variously described as conservative or ultra-conservative. Her domestic policy includes support for proactive government, spending, and continuation of Abenomics, like I was just talking about. She has taken conservative positions on social issues, such as opposition to same-sex marriage. So she is opposed to gay people, gay, lesbian, it depends. Trans people getting married. To the recognition of separate ceremonies, she's opposed to the recognition of separate ceremonies for spouses. So if your parents have two separate names, like say your dad's name is Smith and your mom's last name is like McDonald, and she just decides to keep her own name, she is opposed to that, to even have your own name. And she is opposed to female succession to the Japanese throne. So basically that means that she is more than okay with her ascending to the highest office in the land, but she's against a woman ascending to the throne. Do you see kind of like a cognitive dissonance? And if this really was a win for women, then maybe her policies would support women, but they don't. She's just a Shinzo Abe clone. She supports revising Article 9 of the Constitution of Japan, which renounces the use of military force. So, post World War II, and post, there was occupation of Japan, and they basically made them put into their constitution that you cannot use military force in international matters because you have done enough. And she is for revising that article. So she wants to make it so that they can start wars when they want to. Which a pro-Taiwanese foreign policy and strengthening the U.S.-Japan alliance. It's so crazy that capitalism will have to, like, US will just cozy up to anybody that is like a capitalist drone. Like, it makes sense that the US and Japan are good allies and want to strengthen their alliance because they've have committed similar atrocities, but not 70 years ago you were fighting them in a world war. Not 70 years ago they bombed Pearl Harbor. It's just like the American national consensus and like attention span is about 5.5 minutes. A member of the Nippon Kaigi, she has been described as holding revisionist views of Japan's conduct during the Second World War and criticized the Murayama and Kono statements. She has made regular visits to the controversial Yasukuni Shrine. So, to even understand, to understand Takaichi, you have to understand Abe. And in order to understand Abe, you have to understand this group that they were both members of, the Nippon Kaigi. So it stands for like Japan Conference. Is Japan's largest ultra-conservative and ultra-nationalist far-right non-governmental organization and lobbying group. It was established in 1997. Has 38,000 to 40,000 members. And the Prime Minister, Takaichi, right now is a member, and so was Shinzo Abe. The group has significant influence in Japanese politics. Many ministers and a few prime ministers are included as members, including Sanae Takaichi, Shigeru Ishiba, Taro Aso, Shinzo Abe, and Yoshida Suga. The organization describes its aims as to change the post-war national consciousness based on the Tokyo Tribunal's view of history as a fundamental problem. So the Tokyo Tribunal, let's just look over it, also known as the Tokyo Trial and the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal, was a military trial convened on April 29, 1946 to try the leaders of the Empire of Japan for their crimes against peace, conventional war crimes, and crimes against humanity, etc. So they want to change the consciousness viewing the history of Japan as a fundamental problem, and they don't agree with the Tokyo Tribunal, where the war criminals were tried for their war crimes and atrocities. They are revisionist. They just want to rewrite the past, and even if they don't want to rewrite the past, they want to change the viewpoint of these actions as good for the nation, which they weren't. I mean, Korea and China still fucking hate you. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, to revise Japan's current constitution, especially Article 9, which forbids the maintenance of a standing army, which is what we were just talking about, using the army in international matters. The group also aims to promote patriotic education, support official visits to Yasukuni Shrine. So this is the shrine we were talking about that is basically like, it would be like the President of the United States visiting like a, like, I don't even know, commemoration for the Civil War, like generals and Nazis. Like, you have to, like, it's different, but like this is commemorating those soldiers who died in the service of Japan in the wars where they were committing atrocities against humanity. So these people, I think having respect for the dead is up to your own country and culture, whatever. I don't really have anything to say about that. But you don't have to pay respects to that. Like, you don't have to go to the shrine. You don't have to. You don't have to go to the shrine. And they want to promote a nationalist interpretation of state Shinto. So Shinto is the majority religion in Japan. So basically what that means is, in like America talk, the Christian nationalists. It's basically like that is religion nationalism. I have no idea. It also denies that comfort women, recruited by Japan during World War II, were forced to work. We'll talk about comfort women in a minute because I have it pulled up, so we'll get there. The Nippon Kaigi believes that Japan should be applauded for liberating Sorry, I can't, oh my god, I can't keep reading when I read something crazy. They believe that Japan should be applauded for liberating much of East Asia from Western colonial powers. Okay. They believe that the 1946 to 1948 Tokyo War Crimes Tribunals were illegitimate and that killings by imperial Japanese troops during the 1937 Nanjing massacre were exaggerated. We're going to go over that as well. Exaggerated or fabricated. The group vigorously defends Japan's claim in the territorial dispute over the Senkaku Islands with China and denies that Japan forced the comfort women into the sexual slavery during World War II. Nippon Kaigi is opposed to feminism, opposed to LGBT rights, and the 1999 gender equality law. The gender equality law is basically, it was just a law put in place making it so that both genders are equal by law. So Sanae Takaichi is a part of this group, the Nippon Kaigi, and it is opposed to feminism and is opposed to the gender equality law. She doesn't believe that she should be equal to the people under her. I don't know. Like, she's fucking stupid. So, all right. So let's talk about. So before Takaichi, there was Shinzo Abe. She was a protege of Shinzo Abe. Shinzo Abe was a part of this group, Nippon Kaigi, and so was Takaichi. So I want to talk a little bit about Shinzo Abe, because in order to understand her fully, you have to understand where she's coming from politically and who she aligned with and so on. Alright, so Shinzo Abe, was a Japanese statesman who served as Prime Minister of Japan and President of the Liberal Democratic Party from 2006 to 2007 and again from 2012 to 2020. He was the longest serving Prime Minister in Japanese history, serving for nearly 9 years in total. A staunch conservative and a member of the Nippon Kaigi organization, which holds negationist views on Japanese history, Abe took strong right-wing stances and including downplaying atrocities in textbooks, denying government coercion in the recruitment of comfort women during the war, and seeking revision of the Article 9 of the Constitution. In 2007, he initiated the quadrilateral security dialogue with the U.S., Australia, and India aimed at resisting China's rise to superpower. He resigned as premier that year due to Jesus Christ, I just had a stroke. He resigned as premier that year due to his government's unpopularity and his own illness. In 2022, Abe was assassinated in Nara while delivering a campaign speech for the upper house elections. The suspect, Tetsuya Yamagami, confessed that the assassination was motivated by Abe's ties with the Unification Church. So, the Unification Church was mentioned in the video from the Hindu. The Unification Church, if you haven't heard of it, it is more commonly referred to as the Moonies, Reverend Moon. I don't think I even have. They are a cult. They are a bad, harmful organization. I believe they are talked about in the Netflix documentary series, How to Become a Cult Leader or something like that. Or there's a few documentaries on the Moonies if you look them up, and if you're interested in Shinzo Abe had ties, and his government had ties to that cult. It's like a death cult, basically. So a young man who I believe he lost his mother to the cult in some form or another, and then he was motivated to assassinate Shinzo Abe due to his ties to the cult. While opponents criticized him for nationalistic policies and historical revisionism, which they view as threatening Japanese pacifism and damaging relations with China and South Korea, which it does. I mean, they already don't like you. I mean, like, let's be real. Like, I've never met a Korean or Chinese person who's like, yeah, I love Japan, love it. No, it's usually the opposite. So, let's get into some of his political positions because it is worth looking at. So, historical negationism. Some have described Abe as a right-wing Japanese nationalist. Some have claimed that Abe often engaged in historical negationism via his membership in Nippon Kaigi, especially in regard to the Japanese war crimes during World War II. According to some analysts, this caused Japanese relations with South Korea and China to deteriorate under his premiership. In China, Abe's legacy remains mixed. While he was often criticized as an extreme nationalist, others also recognized his efforts for reconciliation between the two countries. It's like it's a bare minimum. In the 1990s, when Abe first became a parliamentarian, he is believed to have co-authored a document denying the Nanjing massacre. The article used to be available in Japan's Diet Archives, but has since disappeared. Abe also made comments that denied the occurrence of the massacre. Dudden has said that the Nanjing massacre denial is akin to Holocaust denial. Which we're going to get into the Nanjing massacre in a bit. I agree with the last sentence there. In 2007, Abe denied to reporters that Japan forced women into sexual slavery during World War II, claiming that there was no evidence. He elaborated that he meant forcible in the narrow sense of the word, to which I have to say, what the fuck are you on about, you old creepy weirdo? Forcible in the narrow sense? Rape is rape. There's no caveats. Rape is rape. Unconsensual is unconsensual. Force is force. Coercion is coercion. Just, stop with the fucking semantic game. Fuck off. Later he apologized, saying, "I expressed my sympathy toward the comfort women and apologized for the situation they found themselves in." They didn't find themselves in a situation. They were ripped from their homes and forced into sexual slavery. on his official homepage, though, he questioned the extent to which coercion was applied towards the comfort women. Classic, like, slut shaming of, except it's on a mass scale of sex slaves. Abe revised his statement regarding comfort women and said that he accepted the report issued in 1993 by the sitting cabinet secretary Yohei Kono, wherein the Japanese government officially acknowledged the issue. Later in the session, Abe stated his belief that the Class A war criminals were not war criminals under Japan's domestic law. So he accepted, he was like, okay, they were sexual slaves, but it's not a crime. It wasn't a crime. They're not criminals. They're not bad guys for doing it. Like, this dude is like, what? Also has Abe. Okay, so he has visited. This is about the Yasukuni Shrine, which is here. Founded by Emperor Meiji in June 1869, and commemorates those who died in service of Japan from the Boshin War of 1868 to 69 to the two Sino-Japanese Wars, 1894 to 95 and 1937 to 1945, respectively, and the First Indochina War of 1946 to 1954. So, if you're unaware, Japan was the bad guy in like all of these, or aligned with the bad guys, or like all of these people who died were most likely committing war crimes. So, it's an interesting place to visit as a politician, because it definitely says a lot about how you perceive the past. Sorry. So Shinzo Abe visited the Yasukuni Shrine on several occasions, which enshrines the spirits of Japan's war dead, including several Class A war criminals convicted in the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, while serving as Chief Cabinet Secretary in the government of Junichiro Koizumi. He visited in April 2006, prompting South Korea to describe the trip as regrettable. He visited again in 2012 on the anniversary of the end of World War II. After winning the presidency of the Liberal Democratic Party, he visited in 2012 again in an official capacity as party president. I believe that's everything. So that gives you so like I was saying before, Takaichi was a protege of Shinzo Abe, so it gives you a kind of a view into where she's coming from politically, and like who she aligned with, and all of those things. Because she is, in terms of the political landscape in Japan, she is not a newbie whatsoever. Okay, so a big criticism of Shinzo Abe that I have, that a lot of people have, is, like we were talking about, the revisionist history of World War II, especially in terms of comfort women. So in order to understand that, I figured we would go through it and to actually understand what comfort women were, and how egregious it is to try and victim blame or deny or revise anything that happened. Comfort women were women and girls forced into sexual slavery by the imperial Japanese armed forces in occupied countries and territories before and during World War II. The term comfort women is a translation of the Japanese yanfu, a euphemism that literally means comforting, consoling woman. During World War II, Japanese troops forced hundreds of thousands of women from Australia, Burma, China, the Netherlands, the Philippines, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, East Timor, New Guinea, and other countries into sexual enslavement. That was a long list, and hundreds of thousands of girls into sexual enslavement for Japanese soldiers. However, the majority of the women were from Korea. Many women died due to brutal mistreatment and sustained physical and emotional distress. After the war, Japan denied the existence of comfort women, refusing to provide an apology or appropriate restitution. After numerous demands for an apology and the revelation of official records showing the Japanese government's culpability, the Japanese government began to offer an official apology and compensation in the 1990s, 40 years later. However, apologies have been criticized as insincere by victims, advocacy groups, and scholars, and me. Many Japanese government officials have continued to either deny or minimize the existence of comfort women. Like, that's the thing, is that you can't come out and say things, oh, we apologize for this in an official capacity, and then the officials are saying different things. It's completely insincere. However, apologies have been criticized by Many Japanese officials have continued to either deny or minimize the existence of comfort women. The Japanese government officially denies that girls and women were coerced into sexual slavery. So, again, they're just saying, oh, no, there was no coercion. It wasn't forced. They wanted to be sex slaves. They wanted to die in droves. They wanted to be brutally mistreated and raped multiple times a day. Fucking disgusting, man. Estimates vary on the number of women, with most historians settling somewhere in the range of 20,000 to 200,000. The exact numbers are still being researched and debated. And this is common in statistics from that time of Japan because they denied it for decades. They tried to hide it and just move on without atoning for decades, and even still kind of want to do that in terms of governmentally. So you can't really get accurate numbers when the person committing the atrocities still doesn't see it as atrocious, like, or the nation, the state. Okay, so part of the Nippon Kaigi and Shinzo Abe that we talked about, and what part of their beliefs are that killings by the imperial troops during the 1937 Nanjing massacre were exaggerated or fabricated. So in order to understand that, let's go through the Nanjing massacre. So in World War II, during the occupation of China by Japan, a lot of atrocities and war crimes were committed. One of the worst by far was the Nanjing massacre in China. Trigger warning for literally everything. This is the Nanjing massacre, or the rape of Nanjing, was the mass murder of Chinese civilians, non-combatants, and surrendered prisoners of war, as well as widespread rape by the Imperial Japanese Army in Nanjing, the capital of the Republic of China, immediately after the Battle of Nanjing and the retreat of the National Revolutionary Army during the Second Sino-Japanese War. Many scholars support the validity of the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, which estimated that more than 200,000 people were killed, while newer estimates adhere to the death toll between 100,000 and 200,000. Again, some of those estimates come from Japan. So it's like, can we even believe what you have to say? Because your officials don't even believe it happened sometimes. Other crimes included torture, looting, and arson. The massacre is considered one of the worst wartime atrocities in history. In addition to civilians, tens of thousands of Chinese prisoners of war and men who looked of military age were indiscriminately murdered. The massacre began on December 13th after Japanese troops entered the city after days of intense fighting and continued to rampage through it unchecked. Civilians, including children, women, and the elderly, were murdered. Thousands of captured Chinese soldiers were summarily executed en masse in violation of the laws of war, as were male civilians falsely accused of being soldiers. Widespread rape of female civilians took place, their ages ranging from infants to the elderly. 1/3 of the city was destroyed by arson. Rape victims were often murdered afterwards. The massacre remains a contentious topic in Sino-Japanese relations, as Japanese nationalists and historical revisionists, including top government officials, have either denied or minimized the massacre, aka like Shinzo Abe. As early of December 4th, the Japanese army had been engaging in random murder, torture, wartime rape, looting, arson, and other war crimes in the Nanjing area. These crimes skyrocketed after the Nanjing's capture on December 13th and continued for several weeks depending on the types of crime. The first 3 weeks were the most intense. Atrocities persisted in the Nanjing area for several months, both within the walled city and in the surrounding countryside, until the establishment of a new ruling government on March 28th, 1938. So that's 3 months. The rounding up and mass killings of male civilians and captured prisoners of war were referred to euphemistically as mopping up operations in Japanese communiques, in a manner just like the Germans were to talk about processing or handling the Jews. The massacres were organized to kill as many people within a short time frame, which usually meant rows of unarmed prisoners being mowed down by machine gun fire before being finished off with bayonets or revolvers. The massacres were usually conducted on the banks of the Yangtze River to facilitate the mass disposal of the corpses. In one of the largest massacres on December 15th to 17th, Japanese troops from the Yamada Detachment, including the 65th Infantry Regiment, systematically led 17,000 to 20,000 Chinese prisoners to the banks of the Yangtze River near Mufushan and machine-gunned them to death. Then they disposed of the corpses by burning or flushing them downstream. The Strassning Gorge massacre occurred along the banks of the Yangtze River on December 18th. For most of the mornings, Japanese soldiers tied the prisoner of war's hands together. At dusk, the soldiers divided prisoners of war into 4 columns and opened fire. Unable to escape, the prisoners of war could only scream and thrash desperately. It took an hour for the sounds of death to stop, and even longer for the Japanese to bayonet each individual. The majority of the bodies were dumped directly into the Yangtze River. In many other instances, prisoners were decapitated, used for bayonet practice, or tied together, doused in gasoline, and set on fire. Wounded Chinese soldiers who remained in the city were killed in their hospital beds, bayoneted, clubbed, or dragged outside and burned alive. The Japanese also extended their search and destroy operations to the Nanjing countryside during the Battle of Nanjing. Japanese units systematically wiped out towns and villages spread out in the outlying regions, perpetrating rapes, arson, and indiscriminate massacres which added up to an enormous number of deaths. Japanese troops gathered 1,300 Chinese soldiers and civilians at the Taiping Gate and murdered them. The victims were blown up with landmines, then doused with petrol and set on fire. The survivors were killed with bayonets. U.S. News correspondents F. Tillman Durden and Archibald Steele reported seeing corpses of massacred Chinese soldiers forming mountains of 6 feet high at the Nanjing Yuzhang Gate in the north. Durden, who worked for the New York Times, toured Nanjing before his departure from the city. He heard waves of machine gun fire and witnessed the Japanese soldiers gun down some 200 Chinese people within 10 minutes. He would later state that he had seen tank guns used on bound soldiers. Ralph L. Phillips, a missionary, testified to the U.S. State Assembly Investigating Committee that he was forced to watch while the Japanese disemboweled a Chinese soldier and roasted his heart and liver and ate them. Just after Christmas, the Japanese set up public stages where they called upon former Chinese soldiers to confess, claiming that they would not be harmed. When over 200 former soldiers did come forward, they were promptly executed. When former soldiers stopped identifying themselves, the Japanese began rounding up groups of young men who aroused suspicion. So you can see on the right there's a picture of a Chinese soldier down on his knees, and he's about to be beheaded. The Japanese had admitted to rounding up around 15,000 Chinese men in the first 3 days, and that they had captured 25,000 Chinese soldiers who were systematically rounded up and executed. Historians' analysis of Japanese wartime records implicates Japanese forces in the illegal and unjustifiable mass murder of 46,215 men who they considered Chinese military personnel, including men they had rounded up in civilian clothing. So it wasn't just a massacre of Chinese soldiers. It was also, there was mass rape that went on during this from Japanese soldiers to Nanjing women. And like I said earlier, ranging from any ages from infant to elderly. And you can't really talk about the Nanjing massacre without talking about the mass rape that went on. There's a photo on the right that I had to strike out because it's a picture of a female you can see a woman who is naked from the waist down, and she has a stick stuck straight through her genitals. So I struck it out for YouTube, but it gives you an idea. The International Military Tribunal for the Far East estimated that in the first month of the occupation, Japanese soldiers committed approximately 20,000 cases of rape in the city. Some estimates claim 80,000 cases of rape. According to the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, rapes of all ages, including children and elderly women, were commonplace, and there were many instances of sadistic and violent behavior related to these rapes. Following the rapes, many women were killed and their bodies were mutilated. A large number of rapes were done systematically by the Japanese soldiers as they went from door to door searching for girls, with many women being captured and gang raped. A Japanese soldier said, "Women suffered the most. no matter how young or old. They all could not escape the fate of being raped. We sent out coal trucks to the city streets and villages to seize a lot of women, and then each of them was allocated to 15 to 20 soldiers for sexual intercourse and abuse. After raping them, we would also kill them. The women were often killed immediately after being raped, often through explicit mutilation, such as penetrating vaginas with bayonets, long sticks of bamboo, or other objects. For example, a 6 months pregnant woman was stabbed 16 times in the face and body, one stab piercing and killing her unborn child. A young woman had a beer bottle rammed up her vagina after being raped and then was shot. Edgar Snow wrote how the discards were often bayoneted by drunken Japanese soldiers. A 15-year-old girl was locked naked in the barracks housing 200 to 300 Japanese soldiers and raped multiple times daily. American correspondent Edgar Snow wrote how frequently mothers had to watch their babies beheaded and then submit to raping. YMCA head Fitch reported that a woman had her 5 months infant deliberately smothered by the brute to stop it crying while he raped her. A conservative estimate of people slaughtered in cold blood is somewhere about 100,000, including, of course, thousands of soldiers that had thrown down their arms. So, a lot of that stuff is very dark and it's a heavy topic, but it needs to be acknowledged because the people in power in Japan are members of a organization, and they themselves as individuals have minimized this massacre and tried to revise history. And this is one, like I said earlier, like it is one of the worst. The massacre is considered one of the worst wartime atrocities in history, and to minimize or revise history about a massacre is just deplorable. On top of the fact that they're also minimizing the fact, like trying to revise history and minimize the fact, slut shame, victim blame, these people that they kidnapped and forced into sexual slavery to mitigate wartime rape. Look how look how well that happened for Nanjing. Like, and this comfort women thing is, the North Koreans took that idea and ran with it. So, I know we just went through a lot, but these are things you have to understand the Nippon Kaigi. These are bad people. They are the worst of the worst. They are ultra conservative. They are anti-woman, LGBTQIA 2S. They are anti-equality. They are like war crime sympathizers. They are revisionist. They like subscribe to revisionist history. They are not a good organization. This is what multiple prime ministers have been a part of in Japan. So back to the reason that we're actually talking about all of this. Sanae Takaichi. Takaichi has been described as holding hardline conservative and Japanese nationalist views, citing former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher as a role model, which is so fucking stupid. Like, she is the most hated politician probably ever in England, even in like larger United Kingdom. Like, to look up to her is crazy. And for anybody that is like, oh, she might be good for the, just look at who she looks up to. Like, no, look who she was the protege of. Margaret Thatcher as a role model and deeply influential on her personal political beliefs. Like Thatcher, she is called the Iron Lady. Great. Takaichi is a member of the Nippon-kai, an organization that argues for a reinterpretation of Japanese history amongst ultra-nationalist lines. So they want to reinterpret all of the atrocities and massacres and war crimes that they committed. What? Takaichi is on the far right of the political spectrum within the LDP. Takaichi has been described as far right by Deutsche Welle and South China Morning Post, and various sources, including Time Magazine, the Los Angeles, blah, 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 have described her as ultra-conservative. Well, so do I. Her views on immigration. Like her fellow candidates in the 2025 LDP leadership election, Takaichi has been described as taking a hard-line stance on immigration. The New York Times stated that during her leadership campaign, she seized on a wave of anti-immigrant sentiment. Specifically, she has been described as wanting tighter restrictions on immigration and employed anti-immigration rhetoric during her campaign. This is all along the lines with this ethno-nationalist bullshit that the States loves too. Takaichi has advocated for tax increases on corporations, which is a good thing. She has considered raising taxes on cash deposits rather than retained earnings. And in September 21, she estimated that a 1% tax on corporate cash deposits would increase tax revenue by 2 trillion yen, even if companies with capital of 100 million yen or less are excluded. Tax revenue would increase by 1 trillion yen. So, like I was trying to say earlier, Abenomics, it's flawed, and it's definitely not going to lead anywhere great, but there are good parts of it. It's better than like Reaganomics, but at the same time, it's not good. Like, just because something is better than it comparatively doesn't mean it's good. So her take on social issues. Takaichi has expressed socially conservative views on several issues. She said in December 2020 that proposed legislation to recognize separate family names for married couples could destroy the social structure based on the family units. So your mom keeping her surname, that could destroy the family unit. What? Takaichi also opposes revising the imperial household law to allow women to ascend the chrysanthemum throne. So like I was saying earlier, she is all for herself ascending to the highest office in the land, but she is against a woman being allowed to ascend to the highest throne in the land. So she's just a hypocritical bigot. While opposing the legalization of same-sex marriage, she has also said that there should be no prejudice against sexual orientation or gender identity, and expressed support in promoting understanding itself. So it's like one of those, like, I don't have a problem with you, I just don't think you deserve rights. Like, okay. What the hell? On nuclear weapons policy, she has said it is contradictory to say that we will adhere to the 3 non-nuclear principles while gaining deterrence under the U.S. nuclear umbrella. She has argued for the consideration of allowing U.S. nuclear weapons into the Japanese territory on land and sea in an emergency. Girl. You want the US to bring you nukes? Didn't that go a little poorly last time? Different circumstances. In March 2022, she said that Ukraine is not a distant issue, pointing to the Russian military bases in the Kuril Islands as well as China. Takaichi has been described as holding revisionist views of Japan's conduct during the Second World War. Takaichi has made multiple visits to the Yasukuni Shrine, which is viewed as controversial in China and Korea, and in my house, primarily surrounding its enshrinement of the Japanese Second World War era Class A war criminals. She made visits in April and August of 2024, both times signing as Minister of State. She also visited in August of 2025 on the 80th anniversary of the surrender of Japan. In the 2025 LDP leadership race, she said she would continue to visit the shrine if elected prime minister, but in the 2025 race, avoided commenting on the question. I talked about it earlier, but like when they're campaigning and they're brand new in office, they don't go. But as soon as they're like kind of untouchable, they're like, oh, okay, it's time to go. It's okay. People won't mind now, but everybody does. In 2022, Takaichi made remarks about the Yasukuni Shrine issue that were controversial in South Korea. She said, when we act ambiguously, such as stopping our visits to Yasukuni Shrine midway, the other side climbs up, using a derogatory Japanese word, which means to take advantage of someone's politeness or kindness and act impudently. She went on to say that continuing to visit the shrine would eventually make neighboring countries look foolish and stop complaining. So basically, she means like if we just keep on doing it, eventually they're just gonna be annoying, and now they'll stop whining about it. Lady, kick rocks. Like, go lick rust, bitch. Anyways, so like I was saying earlier, Japan's first female prime minister might seem like a win for women. It's not. And I think we have to be cognizant of these things when they happen, and we cannot blindly ascribe to anybody, because look what could happen.